and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to call this meeting to order. We have approval of the agenda. I would need a motion to approve the agenda as is. Or are there any additions or corrections?
Madam Chair, one item that we'd like to add to this agenda, if the board agrees, is the Family First Corona Response Act extension.
Okay, that will
That's
be
discussion
item H. Okay. Is there a motion to add this to the agenda?
Motion.
Mr. Bryant, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Robertson, all those in favor? Aye. Next, we have, well, that's approving that one item being added, but do I have a motion for the agenda now as it stands?
I make a motion for the agenda as it stands.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Next, we have the good news portion. Dr. Rice?
And I'll turn it over to Ms. Jessup at this time to recognize some very special people.
Good evening, board and special guests. It's nice to be with you this evening. It is with great pleasure I want to present to you this year's National Board Certified Teachers who just received this very special certification. I want to give you a little background about the North Carolina and the National Board's certification process. It's a very rigorous process. It takes a great deal of work and dedication on the part of that teacher. North Carolina is the top state in the entire nation when it comes to the number of National Board certified teachers that are employed in our schools across North Carolina. We currently have 22,953 National Board certified teachers in North Carolina. Stokes County has 38, and with the recognition of these 4 people tonight, it will make Stokes County have 42 total, which is around 13%, which is very good as well. These National Board certified teachers will receive a 12% pay increase. They will also be given full license renewal for completing the process, and this is whether an individual gets the achievement that these young ladies have received or they just complete the process. So they are recognizing as teacher leaders. These individuals we're recognizing tonight are already teacher leaders in our classrooms and outside our classrooms. So without further ado, I would like to call first Allison Neese at London Elementary School. I'll tell you a little bit about Allison. And Allison, if you want to take this and maybe stand right over there behind Mr. Rogers and Mr. Bryant. Thank you. Mrs. Neese works at London Elementary School, and she earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in English from Salem College in 2009 and her Master of Education in Language and Literacy from Salem College in 2012. She is licensed in the following teaching areas: language arts for the middle grades 6 through 9 area, English as a second language for grades kindergarten through 12, English for secondary for grades 9 through 12, reading for grades K through 12, and elementary education for grades K-6. Allison began her career in Stokes County in August of 2009, and she has 11 years of experience total as an educator. So congratulations, Mrs. Neese, on this wonderful recognition. Next, if Ms. Donna Stokes could come up. Thank you. While she's walking over, Mrs. Stowe is a teacher at Sandy Ridge Elementary School. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree from Old Dominion University in 2001, her Master of Education degree from Everett University in 2007, and her Master's in Educational Leadership from Radford University in 2011. Ms. Stowe is certified in the following areas: elementary education, grades K-6, curriculum instructional specialist, and school administrator principal. She began with Stokes County Schools in August of 2017 However, she spent many years in Virginia, so she has a total of 19 years as an educator. Congratulations, Mrs. Stowe. Next, I would like for Teresa Walkup to come up from Southeastern Middle. While Teresa is walking over, she does teach at Southeastern Middle School. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from Fayetteville State University in 2008. Teresa is certified in the following areas: elementary education, grades K-6, social studies, grades 9-12, also social studies for the middle school, grades 6 through 9, mathematics for grades 6 through 9 in the middle school. She's also one of our academically and intellectually gifted licensed teachers. She began with Stokes County Schools in August of 2017 and has a total of 12 years experience as an educator. Congratulations. And finally, but not least at all, is Mrs. Heather Fowler. She has joined us tonight through the live stream. Mrs. Fowler teaches at West Stokes High School. She earned her bachelor's degree from Meredith College in 2011. She is certified in the following areas: elementary education, grades K-6. She's also an academically gifted and intellectually licensed teacher. She's licensed in English for secondary grades 9 through 12. Heather began with Stokes County Schools in August of 2016 and has 7 years experience as an educator. Please join me in congratulating Mrs. Fowler. And board, that concludes the recognition of the National Board Certified Teachers for this year. If you would like to join them, we'll make a picture. Thank you. Congratulations, ladies.
Somewhere over there, other than in front of those chairs. I don't know where it would be better, you know.
Here we go. This is the first one. Do one additional. Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
And ladies, as y'all go back to your seats or as you're gathering your things to leave, we quickly said that was a rigorous process. Fill us in on that just a little bit. What month of the year did y'all kind of start that process for you?
It's throughout the whole thing, it probably took me a good 2 years total.
Okay.
Part of that was working on things before I actually got the components, and then following through with all the different things that we had to do for each component.
When I talked to teachers about that, and that was not a big thing when I started teaching in Tennessee. In fact, I'd never heard of it till I came to North Carolina. 9 months to 2 years, 10, 15, 20 hours a week, tons of time and effort. And so when they say rigorous, they mean rigorous. And when you turn in everything, when around April, May, and then take a test in the summer, and then you have to put it through the torture of waiting until December to find out if you passed or not. It is a brutal process, and thank you for your courage for going into it and for your diligence in finishing. It's an awesome thing.
Thank y'all. Next, we have public comments. Is there anyone signed up? No. Next, we have the consent agenda. Items A, approval of the regular session minutes from December 14th, as well as approval of fundraising requests. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Or first, any discussion or questions regarding those two items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the discussion agenda, item A, discussion of the Qualtrics 2020 Employee Engagement Survey.
Good evening, board members and special guests. This is Ryan. Is everyone able to hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's good to be with you all again. I hope everyone had a safe and enjoyable New Year's holiday. We are excited to report that the board members have all received, actually, let me quickly stop and lay out what we're looking to report on today. With the completion of the employee engagement project, we wanted to map out some next steps, and I know that it was deemed relevant to also remind the board and the administration of some of the other potential ways that districts in North Carolina have found value in using the Qualtrics solution. We'll be able to do that very briefly today for the board's consideration. Speaking to the employee engagement project, all board members have now been able to, as far as Qualtrics has been able to ascertain, are now able to successfully log into their dashboard, being able to view the 2020 engagement survey results. It's now important to know not just that this data lives in a visual format, but what can be done with it. It's our understanding at Qualtrics that the Stokes County Board will now be reviewing this data, and being able to access this data now will go forward and set forth some strategic initiatives on how to correctly interpret and act on this data. It's inherent within the Qualtrics program to not only be able to view data in this format, but also to create action plans right within, or import action plans that the board will be deciding upon as they review this data and seek to make improvements. So at that point, Qualtrics will be ready to engage to help load those action plans in. The overall goal of that being a real opportunity to view the data as was collected in this engagement survey, be able to put action plans in place to then watch change be tracked over time, so that by the next go around for the engagement survey, we're able to see the original state, the action plans that were put in place, and then the noticed or measurable change in the following year's survey results. Naturally, as the district and the board at large seeks to continuously improve the experience of their employees, Qualtrics will be able to help track that. One of the ways that we've been, asked to provide a little more clarity is in the way that Qualtrics can make some of this data in aggregate available to people managers or administrators within the district. This can include things like school or location specific dashboards for principals or other people managers. In that way, allowing them to view in aggregate data that will help them to report or be accountable for action plans that the board makes. And then that is a custom view of the dashboard created automatically by Qualtrics, separate from the board's view of the data from a district perspective. Now, I know that that represents quite a bit of work on this board's team, but it's nice to know that the technology will support your efforts going forward to then act on the data as has been gathered from the feedback from Stokes County Schools employees. I do want to pause really quickly, and I know that oftentimes what Qualtrics learns from one district may not match a scenario for another, and we want to make sure that as the Qualtrics custom solution for Stokes County Schools is unique to your district, to see if there are any questions that would be relevant to discuss as a group, or if there are any comments that a board member would like to make. I would love to make sure we give a microphone for that. Does anyone have questions or comments related to these next steps?
Anyone currently concerns, questions about going forward with the info, or?
No, I found it very helpful to know kind of what the majority of people were thinking, as well as what the minority of people were wanting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're good.
Anything? Anybody else?
I'm good.
I appreciate that brief feedback. It's good to know that the dashboard at this first pass has been valuable. Naturally, the cement never dries in the Qualtrics platform. And by that, I mean that If later on we'd like to see a different breakout or would like to view the data in a format other than the dashboard is currently displaying, Melissa and team are aware of the steps needed to be able to create those custom views, and she has the support of the Qualtrics team in those efforts. This is not a presentation of our platform by any means, but it will be useful for the board to understand ways that Qualtrics has also been able to help schools before the pandemic situation and during it with different parent, student, staff, and community-facing engagements. And I'll just take maybe 90 seconds and highlight 2 visual aids that will help and have helped different administrative teams in the state of North Carolina be able to take their Qualtrics usage and expand it further. Oftentimes now, as Americans, we're used to a membership or a subscription style format. In a very similar fashion, you didn't just buy Qualtrics and only have access to an employee engagement project. Our platform supports an unlimited number of projects as the board and as the school system sees fit. So there's a screen that I have here that I'm pulling up that will hopefully help display that. Now I do want to make sure that the group can see what I'm presenting. If I go to full screen here, does everyone see a white window with the Qualtrics logo in the middle?
We're pulling it up on the viewer now.
Okay, thank you. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're seeing a white screen with the Qualtrics logo in the middle.
There's nothing showing, sir.
I appreciate that feedback. Let's try this method. I know sometimes with these presentation softwares, I can find that if I try to go full screen, it won't display it. So I may do partial screen for the groups.
It looks like
viewing ease. Is that now showing?
No, sir, still nothing.
Karen, click on the waffle and see if we can get his screen up.
And it very well may be me, everyone. My screen currently does say you're presenting to everyone, but I'm less familiar with the Google Meet platform, so it may be me. I will inform the group as well that this is meant to be also a leave behind. So if for some reason that's unable to be seen, I can ensure to share the materials over. I'm unaware of who Ann Sliger is, but she's saying that she's able to see the screen if that helps.
Karen, if you click
Appreciate that feedback, Ann.
click on the participants, the 4 at the top, and then click on his name, then I believe it should show his screen. All right, like double click on it or pin to the screen. There we go.
Fantastic. Now, I don't want to jinx it, but let me try and go full screen so it's a little bit easier for everyone to see. Tell me if that stays or if it goes.
We're good?
We have it. We're
It's
good.
there.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Just a quick reminder for the group, when Qualtrics defines itself as an experience management platform, remember that schools, state and local governments, and higher education, all the public sector are using Qualtrics to take those large amounts of operational data found in a student information system or a human resource information system, and then pairing that with feedback data to be able to improve the experiences of your key stakeholders. And so if we're talking about experience management for a school system, particularly the ways that we've seen North Carolina use it, we've focused very heavily in this first engagement on employee experience. Doing the things that will help attract, engage, and retain the top talent that Stokes County Schools wishes to keep for the benefit of students. Then, Qualtrics isn't looking to expand from a contractual perspective into community, student, and parent, because Stokes County Schools already has the functionality to be able to deploy projects as needed, not, obviously dictated by Qualtrics, but dictated by your strategic initiatives to these other key stakeholder groups. It's important to note that because as we've seen schools transition from fully remote to Plan B and Plan C models, we've seen things like SEL check-ins and daily attendance check-ins for your fully hybrid or fully remote students be deployed by North Carolina LEAs via Qualtrics. We've seen contact tracing and symptom screening, especially with the state's new mandate for contacts to be routed to the state with the CCTO system. For the ease of nursing staff and health services to be able to report that data without having to do too much manual work. More importantly, at large, Qualtrics is meant to house these types of programs or types of projects across the 4 stakeholder groups that I identified. And so as this board begins to act on employee experience data, it may find that pairing that data or correlating that data to the experience of parents and students will be useful to understanding how improving the employee experience has a positive effect on student outcomes or has a positive effect on a family's experience with the district. Naturally, as the district serves its community better, there's really no party that loses. Everyone wins when students are happy and learning things that prepare them for a successful future. And in those efforts, we see neighbors of yours using us for teacher walkthroughs, observations, program evaluations, especially when it comes to rolling out a new program or a new technology across the district. Digitizing certain manual or paper pencil processes that we're unfortunately no longer able to do in person or over a in-office format, as well as the surveys that allow the board and district administration to gather a pulse of how the students, parents, and community at large are doing during any given moment in their yearly journey with our school. Naturally, each one of these topics could have a meaning of their own. The last thing that's worth showing is, in addition to the free content that is included in those different categories previously shown in my presentation, Qualtrics also has released free solutions for districts who are, again, Stokes County Schools has done a fantastic job, to my knowledge, of preparing and allowing students to return to in-person learning. If needs arise that, other things like daily symptom testing, digitizing the transportation attestation form, contact tracing, clean campus solutions, all of these are, again, free content available within our platform, all with the idea that, the district will not have always early warning when a new data challenge or a new data opportunity arises. And we found that districts in North Carolina who are really taking the full advantage of our tool are able to treat it as a Swiss Army knife and build solutions as data problems or data opportunities arise. I will share this over so that it's a leave behind for the administration. Dr. Rice and his team are aware of the ways that Qualtrics can be used, and I know that Qualtrics is no one's full-time job here. And so reminding you and connecting you to the ways that other districts have found value in this tool will continue to be a personal goal of myself and the rest of the Qualtrics education team. If there are other questions related to use cases seen that would like to be discussed in this meeting, I'll stay on as long as necessary. My guess is that this will be just good information to review in the future for the sake of the board meeting agenda. But I'll turn the time over to the group if there are any other questions or comments before I turn the mic back over.
You did mention that you also offer like an initiative or a way for, or recommendations for boards and districts to help work on or improve certain areas of concern. Is that correct?
If I may, ma'am, do you have a little bit more of a specific use case? Because the answer is definitely yes, but
Okay.
the devil's in the details when it comes to those types of projects. So if there's a specific use case, I'd love to give a little bit more specific answers.
Not specific right at this time, but, once the board can kind of discuss it more freely, if, maybe at our next work session or something. and reach back out to you. It's just good to know that, those services are there, and we appreciate your time.
That's great. And, just to give one maybe more confirmation of the question that you just asked, the ability for Qualtrics to quickly, without a lot of coding or setup, to reach out to these groups and gather real-time data is definitely a benefit that schools have utilized. And as the board sees need, we're available, so you can, have a scoping call with us, and we can help you with a concept map, or even connect you to a existing resource. So you don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Anything else? We're good?
I don't have anything for Ryan, but I mean, I would like to see us start to develop a way to bridge. From what I read, 30% of our people feel like we don't project our mission statement well. They want to know what our vision is going forward. Although 70% knew it, the fact that 30% didn't feel comfortable or didn't understand it, to me is a little bit troubling on a district as small as ours with a simple focus. And then that same 30% seemed to think that there wasn't a lot of collaboration. Well, yes, our model is a lot of small schools, kind of geographically isolated, but we need to find a way, if we're able to teach our students online, we've got to be able to bridge that gap with our educators online, so they feel like if I've got a question, I've got to have a support group. And that potentially could assist not only test scores, but retention, because you don't feel like you're on Gilligan's Island waiting for
An answer?
waiting for somebody
support.
to come rescue you.
Yeah.
Instead, we can go. And again, it was almost that same 30% from what I read through the dashboard when I started digging into the data. So I think I would like to see the leadership team help us promote the message a little clearer, and also develop a plan for everybody working together, pulling the cart. That's all I had.
I agree.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah, anyone else? If we can kind of keep this going on our agenda and definitely follow back up, and maybe once, that can be discussed further with administration, see, what we can do to communicate better, motivate, make it clear our vision, like you mentioned.
There was also one section in the survey that's the heat map that I found pretty interesting. It's just some of the schools seem to, are there issues at some of the schools? Is morale bad, or Chestnut Grove was one of the schools that had a lot of red on the heat map, and I think it may be something we can discuss a little bit later and try to figure out some answers for some of those issues that may be going on at the schools. Some of the schools look good, but some of them I think maybe we need to pay a little bit better attention to and see what's happening with them.
One thing that I've found is talking to teachers and stuff, some in Stokes County, some in some other counties. If I get a chance, somebody I know, I ask questions. And this virtual thing is driving a lot of them crazy, causing a lot of stress for our teachers and stuff, much less our students. It's very stressful for them and then their parents. So the virtual thing, I think, has a whole lot to do with some of the problems that we're having.
We'll talk about that more later in the agenda.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a lot of
Pleasure
information.
being with y'all. Have a great night.
It's a
You
ton of
too. Thank
information,
you,
and,
Brian.
we really didn't have much of a chance to review it before the meeting. I think by the time we got into the dashboard, that was about the middle of this past week, and there's a lot of information there to try to consume it in a couple days.
But very valuable. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have discussion of the 1000 series of policies. Are there many other 2000, 3000 that we haven't addressed, or do you feel that most of it's been cleaned up with the service with the NC School Board?
Well, the service has gone through with each section.
Okay.
But there are several different sections that's going to take us the better part of this year to get all the way through. This is the first
Okay.
group that we are going to look at. I sent the board last week a link to a Google Drive. It's also summarized in your packet today. The School Board Association, if you remember roughly a year ago, paid the School Board Association to go through and look through our policies to see what the most recent revision that we had in our policies versus what their latest recommendation was. And so the first section that we're going to go through is this 1000 series. Again, I sent you a link last week that had our current policy in it, the latest revision, and then a summary sheet, which is basically this, except for when we had a recent revision, and like in the fall update or the July update, I added that as well. And so you've had that for about a week. You've had this spreadsheet with the notes in the right. I've talked with Mr. Johnson about it. He can certainly speak for himself. He agreed with the updates that the School Board Association has mentioned. Are there any questions that you have from the information you've been given? Do you need more time to go through it? Would you, if this is the first time we've tried to do this many in a group. And so I kind of want to check to see what your comfort level is, the way we've been giving you these updates, or would you like more time to go through them as a group with Mr. Johnson or I, or Dr. Taylor kind of walking through the step-by-step changes? Or is this enough for you for this type of update?
I'm personally, I'll just share what I was sort of thinking. We have access to the drive. We have the summary, or if you guys, are you okay with the summary? And not having everything printed, we can refer to what Dr. Rice sent in the Google document. And then, we've had a little bit of time. We can either move forward tonight or we can act, at our next meeting, but we probably, given the time restraints, don't want to review it over like a month each. Is that going to be too long to stretch it out?
Well, whenever the board is ready, they have to sit for 30 days.
Okay.
And then they can be approved at the next meeting. So at this meeting, if you would like to say we have no questions about this, we've looked through this, we're comfortable with all of this, they can sit and the changes would be made at the February meeting. If you would like to wait and have another time to do that, we can then at the work session give you the 2000 series and give you a month to look at it and then have a month to wait and get it approved. So the question is, how quick do you want to do it, and how much reading do you want to do in a hurry? So we can do it, again, move this one to next month for approval, or we could delay it another month and give you a month to look at it. It's up to the board.
I'm good with starting the 30-day clock today.
Mm-hmm.
If we see something between now and the work session, we can always address it.
Sure.
And then we can bring the 2000 series in at the work session to start the 30-day rolling clock, if that's approved by Mr. Johnson. But this way it gets the ball rolling. If we see something, we can always change it in that 30-day window, but this starts the review.
Correct. Okay.
Right.
So that's my suggestion.
So are there any questions about any of these policies at this time? And again, you can certainly reach out to Mr. Johnson or myself, Dr. Taylor, during the next couple of weeks before the work session as well, if you need any clarifying points.
Everything I read, cleaned it up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that suggestion as well. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. If there's no other questions, we'll move on then to discussion item C. And that is discussion of the maintenance bids. Mr. Bowens.
Yes, board members, Pam should have added in your packet the bid tabulations for South Stokes, the Ford project, and the maintenance and transportation uniform bids. I do apologize for getting these to you at last minute. We had the bid opening scheduled for Friday, January the 8th. We had to postpone the South Stokes gym flooring project. That was the second time we bid out the South Stokes Gym Flooring project. The first time we only had one contractor to come to the mandatory pre-bid meeting. We bid it out again on December the 10th. We had two contractors show up, and that is the two contractors that on your bid tab. The contractor that's listed is NA. That's the people that were invited that didn't show up. And I would recommend awarding the bid to the low bidder of Floor Action for $122,213, and that is within budget. We had $125,000 budgeted. The other one is the uniform bids. As you can see, I sent it out to 5 different uniform companies. The far right, it says existing 3-year agreement is with UniFirst. You can see that price. I would recommend awarding that 3-year contract to the low bidder of UniFirst, and it's right beside of it, so you can compare bids, and it's actually a little bit cheaper than what we're paying now. Are there any questions?
When are they looking at updating or redoing the floors? When do they want to start?
We're looking at starting that project on February the 22nd. It's about an 8-week process. We've cleared that with the schools, and John is good with that,
Okay. Do you need this moved to action tonight?
if at all possible.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Goins? Is there a
Make to
motion?
move it to action.
Okay, is there a
I second
second?
that.
Thank y'all, guys. All those in favor?
Uh,
Thank you, Board
Okay,
Member.
we'll make that, action item C.
Thank you, Mr. Gold.
Just for clarification, are we moving one bid or both bids?
Both bids. Yes.
yeah.
That needs to be done right away.
Both bids.
Yeah. We just didn't have any money.
Both bids to action.
No, we don't need to do anything.
Mr. Rogers made the motion, Mr. Bryant
We
seconded.
didn't have a motion.
Mr. Rogers.
Move to next meeting. Approve.
Yeah. Dr. Rice, given the policies and everything, would we, or Fred, do we need a motion to say it's okay to let it sit for 30 days?
Right, I was gonna suggest that we also move this to action, have a motion to accept these policies for the first reading,
Okay.
and then we start with the 30-day.
And we'll vote on it at the next meeting, yeah. So,
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we moved the policy revisions to first reading to action for review.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded. All those in favor of moving that item? Any opposed? So we'll make that action item D. I'm a little bit out of order, but it's going to get there.
Get approved.
Thank y'all. Next, we have discussion of the fire academy.
I have a handout for you, board members. This is a front and back.
Thank you.
And while
Thank
it's
you.
fine to give them a little talk here, hold most of your comments till you get to the mic, please.
Thank you, sir.
So at
I
home
believe
can
this
hear.
is already in our books.
Did you already have that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all right. Pam's ahead of me. I was just going to fill all the board members on some of the history with this fire academy position and discussions and let you know where we're at today and what some of our future plans are in moving forward with this. Mr. Rogers and Mr. Will Carter have been in discussion with me along with Mr. Green, who handles the Walkertown program, in regards to starting a fire academy with Stokes County to build up our volunteers and to meet a need that they're seeing across the county with a lack of volunteers and making sure that we have firefighters for the future. On March 11th, one of the requirements to begin this type of program is that we have a meeting with David Barber, who's over the programs for North Carolina Career and Technical Education, representatives from the Office of the State Fire Marshal, our local members, and then myself, Louise Cape, and the administrators who are going to be overseeing these programs and doing the teacher observation. We conducted that meeting on March 11th last year, and it was approved for us to move forward. We discussed this with commissioners, which you all are aware of, and then we conducted our interviews in October. And once the funding dropped graciously from our county commissioners, we hired Mr. Mark Thorpe. He started that position on December 21st, and I am highly encouraged in everything that I have seen in regards to Mr. Thorpe and his professionalism in working this program. Right now, he has already reached out to some local fire departments. He is collecting materials to get the fire academy going. The first class that we're offering is Public Safety 1. It does not have an extensive list of materials that have to be used. As you can imagine, when we get to firefighter 1, 2, and 3, it is going to be an extensive list. So he is collecting items and working with local fire departments now, and we are getting those items collected to try to save some money. Also, we're going to be working with our carpentry class to go ahead and build what's called the prop shop. There is a blueprint of that in the manual that we received from Mr. Barber to move forward and create one of those for both the schools where this program will be housed. As you know, we were a little delayed in getting that instructor, but we have moved full steam ahead, and I'm pleased with the numbers that we have seen. At this time, we have, I believe, 29 students who were signed up. And we are going to continue marketing this program throughout this semester. Mr. Thorpe is going to communicate with students during their lunch periods and reach out and spark interest. We're going to visit our middle schools to share the components of the program and let them know what type of certifications they will get to participate in. We're going to highlight the program. Once we're allowed to have some of these parent events, and even if we have to do them virtually, we're going to recruit that way and highlight this program along with our other CTE programs to spark interest. We would love to get guest speakers in the field, and he is very well connected within the fire marshal's office to get us the folks that we want to come out, be it EMT, police officers, etc., to spark interest in public safety and mainly for our firefighting academy. Also, we have an excellent model out of Walkertown with the instructor there. He has been pretty integral in talking with us and helping us to build ideas and moving forward with Mr. Eddie Green. And then during the spring, we're going to focus on West Stokes High School to generate interest and set this up very similar to our ROTC program so that the West Stokes students have access to the program as well. I was very specific in how to lay this out, and just so you know, the way that this is stretched, it will allow Mr. Thorpe to focus on one new curriculum each year as we move forward. We'll start with Public Safety 1, which we have rolling through this semester. He's building that curriculum. He is within the modules of the CTE Moodle to get everything that he needs there. And then as we move into Firefighter 1, that will be his focus for next year. Each year, we'll add one new class, and then we will have it fully built in, not only to include the concentrator course of Firefighter 2, but the Pathway Major course of Firefighter 3. And then we'll be able to offer those 3 courses each semester with our schools. I am still looking at the best way to incorporate the West Stokes students, because with ROTC, it is leveled and you can have kind of all-in-one with that. With this, the curriculums are very different. So we're going to have to get creative in how we incorporate West to allow them to get those same opportunities, but we are examining that. I'm extremely excited about the program. Mark is a spark plug, and I think we have hired extremely well there. And I'm extremely grateful to our commissioners for supporting the program and for you all for pushing that program as well. Do you all have questions for me in regards to the Fire Academy at this time?
Any questions? Mr. Rogers?
29 is, what's the breakdown between north and south?
You have, it is actually, ish. It's about 22, 23 to 6. There are 6 students taking it currently at north.
Okay.
But we have 2 sections of it, of that
Right.
course at south.
So you got 11, 11, and 6. So, I mean, comparable numbers. And then prior to fall of 2023, we're removing public safety.
Yes, that is not a prerequisite for the program. It doesn't have a prerequisite course.
Right.
So this is a good starter, just to show multiple components in different areas, but it is not a requirement for having the firefighter classes.
I mean, the reason I'm bringing that up, when we looked at it initially, the intent was to potentially offer public safety, whether it be through EMS or a pre-BLET for law enforcement component. So as we're trying to, as you're trying to go forward with this, if you could just keep in the back of your mind, how do we, in the event we have a lot of interest, that we offer other segues, not just fire, but fire, EMS, any first responder segue.
Okay.
Because, I mean, any first responder that we can get in Stokes County is one less burden that we have. So if we can show the interest, I think if we can educate it, we can fund it.
Okay.
So that's just me personally. I'd like to see law enforcement and EMT eventually. We're already doing CNA. I don't know what the pathway, or if there's a segment to get a jump start on for site tech, and maybe it leads into it for site tech.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Bryant?
Now, you said 22, 23, is that south and west combined or just south?
Right now, we do not have students from West who have signed up.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons that we'll be marketing, and we're going to adjust the starting time like we have with ROTC, so that we can provide the transportation and get them engaged in it too.
Mhm. And on what Mr. Rogers was talking about, the EMT and stuff like that, when I ran on a program, an idea that Ivordale County has called CATS, Career and Technical School. Just something you might want to look at their model and see if you could use something there to help incorporate on ours.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Because the fire academy, EMT, police, CNA, nurses, all kinds of stuff that they've incorporated there. It's a good program.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
I wanted to ask a question. Did you promote any of this at West?
It was available. However, I did not do a huge amount of promotion because the position had fallen so very late. We got the information that we were going to be able to have the position in November. So it was very difficult to build into that.
Well, I think that's why you don't have any students signed up, because
Yes.
it was not promoted there. It's mostly, it seems like, for South Stokes and North Stokes,
Mhm.
and the West students were left out.
Well, we are going to adjust that schedule and incorporate and market heavily this spring to make sure that they are incorporated in the fall.
So how would they be able to add more students if, is Mark going to be able to take more students in the fall?
We have room to grow with the numbers that we have right now.
How many more students could you add?
You can probably go up to approximately 60 students at each of the schools in their program.
The thing that concerns me, and it has with these programs, is that if the student does not sign up their freshman year, then by the time they get to be a senior, a lot of them cannot complete that program because it gets smaller and smaller, the classes. And I've seen that happen with several students, because one way or another, when they tried to sign up for the next class, they were told, oh, you didn't sign up in time, the class is closed. And so by the time they get to be a senior, they can't get in these programs. How's that gonna work here with the firefighter if a student wants to become that firefighter 3, the pathway to the major? How's that gonna, how can you help that student to be able to have confidence that they'll be able to complete that program?
They should be able to take the next level throughout. I mean, we do have some classes that have caps on them. For
That's
example,
right.
our nursing fundamentals is capped at 10, and that is a state requirement. And then we
But-
try to meet some based on safety requirements. For like carpentry, for example, you want to cap around 20.
But I don't think that's made clear with students when they're freshmen that they're, hey, you're gonna have a cap. So we might have 25 in the program right now, but it's gonna be capped. So 10 of you or 15 of you are not gonna be able to complete the program. I don't think that's made clear to students.
We
That
have,
there's
I
a
mean, like,
cap.
with that one particular program, the nursing fundamentals is the one with that tight cap of 10 that we're talking about. And on that one, you know, the students do fill out an application, and then those are scored out to see which students are eligible. You know, and there's a timeline on that.
Well, so you're saying there's no cap on the firefighter?
You would want to meet certain ones for safety requirements. It's probably gonna be around 20 max that you would want in each one of those classes.
Okay, so 20 in each class. But what about that 60 number?
They would teach 3 classes, each semester.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you.
information.
So is he, is the classes, all the classes being taught now at South Stokes and North or just South?
Right now, it's taught 2 sections at South and 1 section at North. Moving forward, we do 1 semester at South and 1 semester at North, if the numbers justify that. If not, we could make adjustments.
So are any of the classes going to be taught at West Stokes?
No, sir. That was not in the
That's what,
plan right now.
so how, will those students travel to South?
Mute.
They would, like we do with the ROTC program.
Okay.
But would there be a cap in the number that can travel to South to take the class? Well, I mean, say 25 people signed up. Are they gonna have 25 people to be able to go to South, or they're gonna have to tell some of them, you'll have to wait till next time?
I mean, we'll work out the transportation to the best of our ability with the ROTC program.
Okay, so,
To my knowledge, in my 4 years here, we've never turned down a kid for the ROTC program because we didn't have a seat on the bus.
If we had that kind of demand, we can get another bus, right?
Right.
Right. That kid-
But it's the time of day, the time slot it's offered. What time are
Right.
they leaving? Are you already at 20? You know, okay, were you
No.
gonna get on the bus when it comes back and go to the next class? You know what I mean? Like, things like
Right.
that. I'm sure it
And they
can.
do adjust the ROTC time for
Mhm.
the West students.
Okay,
So that's what we would be looking at for this program too.
yeah. Anything else, Mr. Robertson?
No, I just want to thank you for your work on it. I think it is a good program, and I'm excited that we can offer the program, and I think it'd be great for our students. It'll be a good career path for a lot of kids too. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing, like you said, I like what I'm seeing with the marketing, just getting like guidance on board with it across all 3, you know, high schools or wherever the interest lays. So we look forward to seeing how it's promoted in the spring. And again, thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have discussion of item E, remote learning.
All right. And board members, I want to talk to you just a little bit about the building of the remote plan and kind of how we have operated within that. We looked at everything within the spring and saw how that went. We collected information from our parents with surveys. Dr. Rice conducted weekly leadership team meetings with our principals, assistant principals, directors. And then we had regional and state level meetings that we attended to get information as well. We took the lessons from the spring and looked at that survey information to figure out what had gone well in the spring and what had not gone as well in the spring. The main thing that we saw, or the number one complaint from the families that we were serving, was the lack of live instruction.
Quick question. Did you have material or something that you were sharing?
I did not. I was going to go over some notes and then share information with you all at the end, because right now,
Okay.
where our report cards have just been completed, we do not have the solid numbers to share with you all.
Yeah, if you could just share what you have with the board, whether it be in an email or however.
Okay.
If you don't have something tonight, either way is fine.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
As we conclude this, I'll let you know what's coming in the future to share with you all. So we saw the main complaint from the families we serve was the lack of live instruction. Where we had the Google Meets, those were well received, and where we didn't, it was not. We also knew that based on everything we saw, we had to have 3 plans or 3 modes of instruction. Plan A, which is what we're operating under with our elementary schools, where every student can be in the school every day. Plan B, which is the hybrid model, which is what we've got with our middle and high schools right now. And then Plan C, which is full virtual, and that is something that they can choose. We have that occurring at all levels right now, per family choice. When we looked at this, there were certain things that we knew would have to be consistent across every plan that we were operating in. The first thing was that we need to have a school-wide learning management system. So you all have heard students talk about Google Classroom or Canvas. Right now we have North Stokes and I believe South Stokes that are operating under Canvas. The other schools have selected to move forward with Google Classroom. The other requirement was that we have Google Meets for all live instruction on new standards, and that our pacing is constant and synchronous for all of our learners. So as we are covering content, it is covered with our live students in the classroom and through our platform and our Google Meets with the students who are not there with us that day. And we need to maintain constant communication. As I said, we currently are operating under A, B, and C at the same time. And that is not to mention even our COVID isolations or quarantines that may cause a student to switch within those plans temporarily. We also recognize that there are barriers to success within these learning systems. Wi-Fi. We know that in parts of our county, the Wi-Fi is an issue. In order to address this, we have made hotspots available to families. Multiple schools work through paper options with families that we are serving, and we have flash drives available to transfer information from the school to the families that we're working with. The next point that I have is attendance, participation, and engagement. These are kind of all rolled into one within the remote learning plan. For attendance, this can be shown by being present within the classroom, participating remotely on the Google Meet, reaching out to the teacher to let them know that you're going to be working within the Google Classroom or Google Meet, or completing all of the assignments for the day. So if they're completing their work and engaged, they will be counted present with the school. For participation and engagement, this is something that's going to be reflected in the grade, and I think we're seeing that reflection now as we review some of these. Remote learning is challenging for distracted learners. I recognize that when I'm in meetings with the region, an email can distract me very quickly. If my phone dings, I look, whereas I would not maybe do that in person. Just like we took and looked at the spring for improvements, we are doing the same thing with this semester that we are just finishing. For this semester, we have had teachers, principals, and parents reach out to us, and we have steered them back to the guidance of the remote learning plan and tried to provide supports to the barriers to improve the practice that we're doing with them. As we move forward with this semester, we're going to be looking at our testing data, our iReady success rates as they are finishing the middle of the year assessment now. And we're also going to take teacher, principal, and parent feedback to improve our practice with what we are doing at this time. Also, we're going to be taking a real careful look at the grades, attendance rates, etc. Ms. McGee and I have sent out a survey to our principals to try to review the interventions, the engagement levels of remote students, and the failure rates at this point in time. And we're going to be setting up focus groups to hear from the teachers and the parents on the remote learning process. As we set these up, we're going to be reaching out to our board members to participate and to hear from these particular groups. We recognize the challenges for our teachers in navigating multiple plans simultaneously. We recognize that parents are struggling and making school work under these plans as well, and we want to support all involved to make this as successful as it can possibly be. We've tried to address all the situations that have been brought our way, and we want to continue to help our schools and our families. As citizens reach out to you all, please have them reach out to us, or feel free to reach out to us directly. so we can help them with the concerns or needs and try to improve what we are doing as well. We're planning on setting up 4 meetings in February to hear from the families and from each grade span of teachers. And again, that is the information that I'll be getting to you all, as well as Ann Sliger and I start culminating and putting together this data. We will share that as well. With that being said, I will ask, yes, sir.
And the one other thing I put on your plate this morning is meeting with Forsyth Tech.
Yes, sir.
We're scheduled that meeting as well with their remote learning department, lessons they've learned as well. I sprung that on him this morning at our meeting. So that'll be another strategy that we're looking at as well.
Yes, sir.
Is that meeting scheduled or is it on?
It is not scheduled yet, but I told them about it. So now we're going to start looking at calendars to get that scheduled.
I'll just say I appreciate your work and effort, and Michael and Anna and everybody, working hard and being on top of this. Like we had mentioned, the focus groups, we feel that's, very important. I would say most of the board agrees that getting parent, input and community input on how do we help you guys with virtual, because we know it's a huge struggle. You guys hear it from your teachers, and sometimes we, hear it from our friends and family of what a struggle it is. So we appreciate that. And then Mr. Robertson reaching out to the kind of main person there at Forsyth Tech that's over virtual learning, just to say, hey, we have some resources and information that they would be willing to share. And we're glad, and we look forward to, seeing what we can do to help and hearing back from these meetings and what can we do different to make it a better experience. And main thing is to help, students and teachers to thrive. So I appreciate it very much.
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions for Doug? Going forward, you mentioned a focus group. If the board, is okay with it, would you mind, say, Ms. Messick as well as Mr. Robertson participating? If you need 2 board members, or if you're doing different groups, we can, involve others. If that's okay with everybody, though, if Mr. Rogers and Mr. Bryant and everybody's okay with that.
I'm fine with it. I did have a question though.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next time in the February meeting, are you going to be able to give us a comparison to the, say the failure rates this last quarter in the high school? Because there's several, there's a big gap, I think, between the failure rates now of a student in high school failing one subject, whereas, they had never failed one before. And so I want to know what that is in, say, each of the high schools, not just a general number, because I think we'd all be surprised at how this virtual learning has affected a lot of students. And one thing that I know that Dr. Rice did was you asked the teachers, especially in the high schools, to accept late work. Did you not do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, they did. They accepted late work and things like that. But if the student on the paper, all these grades are subjective. It's what the teacher, gives the child on a lot of this stuff. And the presentations, if a child gives a presentation virtually, it's what the teacher's judgment is. And so if the student would have gotten a 90 or 100, then they've given them a 50. Now, I guess the thinking is a 50 is better than a 0, but it's still an F. You see what I'm saying? When you turn in a late work and you get half the credit, then you've turned it in, and I guess it is better than a 0, but it still ends up an F. And that really pulls their grades down. So, I don't know how you feel about that. How do you feel about it, Dr. Rice?
Well, again, the deadlines have been extended because of virtual learning. But before COVID, there were times when, a teacher may say, you have a week to turn this in. And then the second week, it's for 80% credit. And the third week, it's for 50% credit. The same type thing would happen here, but it may not be 1 week. It may be now you have a week and a half or 2 weeks. And then after that, it's an 80% credit or 60% credit or whatever. That's been a common thing for years of after a late time to start taking off points. And then there's a time period when there's no longer accepted in either case. But these time periods have been extended and have been, again, we have talked incessantly about giving flexibility in turning in assignments. But there are times when assignments are excessively late that there may be a point reduction or at some point when they won't take them anymore. But the normal timelines have been extended and flexibility has been stressed over and over.
And you do feel like that, I've never even heard of a week or two. I just heard of a couple of days, so.
Normally what we've looked at, again, communication's important. If there's a kid that's sick with COVID for 2 weeks, obviously they would get more grace in turning in an assignment than somebody that has been in class every day and just not turning in work. But the way we've looked at it, again, he mentioned flash drives for people. If somebody is going to school on Monday and Tuesday or not going to school at all and coming and getting a flash drive on Friday, they theoretically would be a week behind every week because that's the mode of their doing their work, a flash drive a week behind the classroom. So they would get an extra week in turning an assignment in. But, when kids are synchronous in classes every day, there's maybe a different timeline for a kid in a different scenario based on their situations. And again, that's where, communication's very key, that if a student's going to be out, for a student or a parent to reach out and say, hey, my child is sick for this week, extend these deadlines. And again, if they're not being in those situations, we need to know about it so we can step in and intervene. But that has not come up to me where people have been sick or had those extenuating circumstances where there's been no leniency in those.
Well, thank you for your explanation. I do feel like that there is a drop in the grades that people have previously made. And I know it's difficult. I know that that's a difficult situation, teach virtually, to learn virtually. And some of those subjects are very difficult. And I'm sitting there listening to the lessons.
I don't think anybody's arguing that.
Yeah, I'm sitting there, I can hear the lesson from the beginning to the end and what the assignment is, how long it's been, given and stuff. So I'm just saying, it's very difficult for both student and teacher and parent.
We are, again, we
Everybody
don't have
knows
the
that.
grades this time yet because the report cards go out on Wednesday and some of them are still working on some of those that are not finalized yet. So we're not able to pull those reports for this evening. But we are fully expecting more Fs than ever before. That has shown up statewide. We're expecting lower grades than we've ever had before. The question, the theoretical, philosophical question that school districts are having is, what is the grade? What does that represent? Does that represent the content attainment for, example, if you're talking about a math class, a math 1, if someone doesn't attain that knowledge this semester, and if there are some districts that have said we need a COVID curve, and so, we're going to adjust grades a certain way. But the reality is then if that kid moves now to math 2 and they can't do math 1, now they're going to struggle in math 2. And then the second semester, if we pass them when they don't know the content in math 2, then next fall they're going to math 3 and they still don't know math 1 content. How well are they going to be doing that? And then when they go to take an ACT or a SAT or go do something. That content attainment is what's important. And a grade is a representation of, do they know the content or do they not? And so, you know, and again, none of us, as the instructional team, and again, you can speak for yourselves, I don't believe any of them will say, we can make virtual learning even with what our teachers can do in the classroom.
Well, no.
I mean, if anything, this has taught us is the value of a teacher, the value of people and individual relationships and that one-on-one time, and how our teachers go above and beyond with motivating kids and, you know, proverbially holding their hands along in the process and encouraging them and all of that. And we lose some of that in this virtual environment, especially the ones who have been on Plan C the entire year, where even if they know their teacher through a screen, you didn't get the recess time. You didn't get the walking to lunch time to hear about their dog and make those connections that teachers make with the magic of a teacher. That's what they're losing in this virtual environment. Now, kids that are wound differently, they may thrive in it and they may love it and excel in that setting. There are some that they need that personal touch of that classroom. And so we're going to look to revise it, try to make it better, look for lessons learned for SciTech and others, and listen to parents, listen to teachers. Again, continuous improvement is the goal, but I don't think we will ever make it on par with that classroom experience. That maybe I'm a traditionalist and maybe I'm too old for it, but I just think there's a power in that teacher that can't be replaced. And so while we're going to try to make it better, there is a dip, and there will be an effect this year in grades and those standings. We know that coming up. Again, as preliminary, looking at some of the incomplete data, I saw students that had very low grades. I mean, in the tens, but then their absences were in the 40s and 50s.
That's what
So
I want to know.
they
How
didn't-
does the grades correspond to attendance?
Well,
And-
for a large part, there is a big correlation. Are there some where there were some in the 10s and 20s, but only had 5 absences? Yeah, there were. We met with a parent recently who was concerned about grades. And when we showed her the grades, that how many zeros there were, that the child never turned in the assignments, where the lowest grade was a passing grade for assignments they turned in. So when they turned in stuff, they were successful. When they didn't turn in things, they weren't successful. And so how do we bridge those gaps? How do we increase the communication? How do we make sure that parents are aware of the tools of Power School, that, you know, every time a teacher enters a grade, my phone buzzes because Power School sends me an update to let me know what his new average is.
Maybe we need a tutorial on
And
how
so-
to sync that up,
So-
okay? A video
And so
online.
those type things are very important.
Yeah,
And although we've been trying to communicate those for years, it's hypercritical now that we do it. I mean, and again, I may sit there and get a buzz and see something my son did, and I might screenshot it real quick and text it to him and say, I expect this fixed before I get home. This is a missing assignment that was put in. Again, there's usually a grace period for that. But if he doesn't do it, he gets a 0. And if he doesn't do it before a grading period or before a couple of weeks time, there's zeros that do go in. And sorry, Joshua, if you're watching, but there's some zeros on his report card.
yeah.
Not for the full class, thank goodness, but for assignments that he didn't turn in time, where he kept saying, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot it, I didn't do it. Those things do happen, but are the tools there to try to keep everybody on the same pace? And then, again, we're trying to improve it, but we're not where it was before. We would like to get it as close as possible, but I can't guarantee we will ever match that experience of being in the classroom with a teacher. Our teachers are magical, and that they show their value during virtual learning. But yes, our grades will take a hit.
Did the high school students get their report card before Christmas?
They didn't get their report cards before Christmas. They finished the classes before Christmas. Report cards will come out this week, I believe. Is that?
Yes.
Ms. Slager's online, I believe. Yes, this week.
Okay.
But we've really advanced a lot though from last March when we went into it in about 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, oh,
When it first
absolutely.
started until today, there's been, I'm sure, a huge improvement. Can you speak to that? I mean, for just a second, is it?
Well, that's what Mr. Rose was talking about at the beginning. One of the big things that we learned, the biggest lesson learned from parents was a face-to-face interaction daily with a teacher, where some teachers were just loading assignments onto, kind of like I did with the policies. And then it's up to you to go look at it. Well, it takes a level of discipline to go in and sit down and block out time and do that. But if every day I know at 8:30, if y'all knew as a board, at 8:30 in the morning, I was gonna be there and say, okay, now let's all open up the first folder and look through here and let's talk about it together. And we're gonna talk about this for 30 minutes. Now your homework tonight is to go through the next 3 and report on those tomorrow. And so then tomorrow morning, we're gonna meet at 8:30, and I'm kind of holding you accountable as we walk through it. There's still some homework, if you will, but all that. Not every teacher was doing that. Some did not have the internet at home. And we basically sent everybody home to teach if they wanted to. And again, in COVID times, there was a lot of fear and a lot of people chose to do that. And so that was the number one thing that we heard was we need a day-to-day face-to-face interaction. Now, again, like a Friday, that may not have happened when we send teachers home, but that's one reason we brought our teachers back into the building this fall. And we said, even if for the first 3 weeks when it's virtual, we want teachers in the building with their materials, with our internet, our cameras, so that there's no excuses, that we will have face-to-face interaction nearly daily. Again, there may be some exceptions here and there, but that's the overall expectation. The other was, as me and you talked the other day, getting schools on one learning management system, where you're not going to Canvas for first period and Google Classroom for second period, and then back to Canvas for third period. So our schools are all on one platform. Now, we do have North and South on Canvas. A lot of that has to do with our implementation of the one-to-one. When we first did that, the Friday Institute came in and worked with North and South and taught them Canvas. So that was the system that they learned on and spent a lot of time on professional development in that. Then when we rolled out Chromebooks to everyone else, we didn't have all of the Friday Institute training, but Google Classroom kind of seemed more user-friendly to some people. Everybody's used to Google and how that works. So the rest of our schools kind of adopted Google Classroom at that time. But we did have some schools that were depending on the teacher. Well, we've cleaned that up to now where schools are all using one learning management system. So kids aren't getting confused. They're not have 10 different passwords. Their parents get confused of how to log in to talk to one teacher versus another. So we cleaned up some of that. Those are type things that we cleaned up from the fall. From last spring. I keep calling that the fall for some reason. Last spring was big. The other thing that happened last spring that didn't do anybody any favors was about a week or two into it when DPI said nobody's grades could go any lower. If you had a B on March 15th, that's the lowest grade you can have. And we had a lot of kids that said, see you next fall. And they never checked in again. And we had and I don't know the percentage, but a large percentage of students checked out at that point. And have heard that a lot of students have said this fall, it doesn't matter what I do, they're going to pass us this fall as well. And we kept trying to tell people, no, we don't think that's the case. Now, again, I can't speak with any certainty. I don't know what, Mark Johnson or the State Board of Education may vote on any semester. But we didn't think that's going to be the case.
This time, Catherine
Truitt now moving forward with the State Board of Education. But even right now, there's questions about final exams. Because we finished our semester and we have finished it. Other schools are going through that now. But students, there are districts that are being allowed to hold off on exams until the spring. So they may have taken Math 1, or give me a great example, Michael. Which math is in our calculation? Math 1 and 3. So you might have taken Math 1 or Math 3 in the fall, finished that class in December in some districts, and didn't take your finals. And you're going to wait because the finals had to be taken in person in the building. And so now the teacher-made exams could be taken at home, but the North Carolina finals had to be, the EOCs had to be taken in the building. Well, there's some districts that haven't brought their students back yet. So they've said, you took your class up until December, but you're going to wait and take your exam next June. There's part of me that wonders, I don't think that's a good educational thing to do. I know I wouldn't have wanted to do that, to take a test, take a class and then 6 months later, take a test on it. I don't think that's going to be good. So is the state board going to intervene in that at some point? What is that going to mean for those of us that did take exams? This pandemic is forcing chaos, if you will. And we're trying to follow the rules that we have at the time and make it the best we can and have again, the education is what's important. None of y'all know what I made as a sophomore in high school, luckily. That makes no difference, but did I attain the knowledge that I needed to be successful in life? That's what's important, getting the education. Again, I know as parents, and I'm just as hard on my kids as anybody, but the reality is, I don't know what any of y'all made as a sophomore or freshman. But having that education is what's important. And that's what we're trying to stress to people. And whether that's holding a grade over their head or a driver's license. We've talked about that, where the law is, if you have too many Fs, you can lose your license. Right. Well, that's going to be a reality check for some people coming up soon, statewide. And so it's all trying to encourage active participation, engagement, doing your best, staying engaged as a student to get the education that you need. But last spring, with just giving kids grades and not holding them accountable, even though we were learning, and I understand why they did it. I mean, there are still districts right now that don't have a computer for every kid that are doing 100% virtual learning. And so we're not there, thanks to a wonderful team, a finance officer that allowed us to spend money, and we made some predictions and it worked. So we got things ordered before other people, and we are in wonderful shape in all of that. There are districts that are light years behind us in that. But the reality is, some kids think that it really doesn't matter, they're going to pass us anyway. And we've been trying to tell them all along the way, you're going to have to do your work. And that's the one variable that we can't take out of the equation. People are going to have to do their work. But we are trying to improve with the feedback, and we'll continue to do so.
We're going to do everything we can to quantify that by looking at the data that we have to come back, getting the feedback that you need to hear from teachers and from our parents alike, so that we can improve on the planning that we have already done. And again, try to make it match up as best as we can to the in-person experience.
I will just ask one last thing. Do we have like a process in place for accountability as far as, not logging on, not seeing their face, not, you know what I mean? Like if it's just consistently happening after a week or two and you know that there's not a COVID issue, is there a process like a guide, or are we just trying to call parents, email parents, hope that they're on board kind of thing?
We have our rotation of contact that we run through from, the teacher reaching out, guidance counselor reaching out. And after a certain length of time, we can incorporate our social workers. They've been a wonderful asset throughout this process.
Have you had to do that thus far?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But again, with it being a possibility to be full remote and to choose that on a day-to-day basis, it's challenging.
It's almost like if you want, if you choose option C, then you may have to have like a higher requirement of attendance. Granted, like in the elementary where they can come 5 days, and if you can't, consistently attend, you would have to look at, okay, well, you're K-5, but we're not seeing you log on and attend, or you're not consistently turning in work, then you need to go back to, in person in a sense, if that's even doable. I don't know, but.
And I agree with you if we weren't facing a pandemic. If we had a virtual school and people were not, I mean, the early college is an example. If kids are not being successful at the early college, they go back to a traditional school. And so that model would work. With the part that makes that difficult is the pandemic. If there is a family whose parent has had cancer and their immune system is stripped, there's a real fear about sending a child to school and coming back.
Understand
And so there
exceptions.
are exceptions. And so how tight are we on the exceptions and what you prove somebody to need?
Oh,
Again, I think Fred would
yeah.
shudder at some of that stuff, but
I'm just
if we
saying
just had
within
it,
reason.
I agree with you though. We have had that conversation and we have reached out to parents and said, this is not working for you. Can you please consider sending your child back? And some have, and some have said, we can't due to the health concerns in our family. Well, we understand that, but
Right.
please realize this is having an educational impact on your child.
Well, thank you so much for all your efforts and hard work. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bryant, I'm sorry, did you have one more?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One thing is, what percentage of our students are 100% virtual? And the other thing is our high schoolers, I know they're on Plan B. On the days that they're not in school, what percentage are actually logging in and or not? Do you
So-
know?
This is where the number gets really kind of tough, and I'll give you an example. There's one particular school where we have 115 students who were signed up for complete virtual instruction. Last week, we didn't see 187 students. Students are choosing to remain on that virtual. So even though I may have signed up for Plan B, I may just decide to come in remotely. So that kind of skews our numbers that we're looking at some within that.
Mr.
You've
Bryant,
got-
in your packet in discussion G,
Mhm.
the second page that was added to your folder tonight, we emailed it out today, is a breakdown, and 29.22% of our students have chosen Plan C for the year at all levels, and it's broken down by school as well.
I know-
But as Mr. Rose was saying, if somebody is in quarantine now for the next 2 weeks, even though they may have said Plan A, now they're Plan C for these 2 weeks. Some people were worried about the Christmas surge last week and may not have sent their child to school last week, even though they've said they wanted to send their kids to school. They may not have last week, waiting to see what the numbers did.
Well, hopefully that's communicated too. I think that's the big part.
Right. And again, but actual showing up online every day, I don't know that we could pull that number without asking every teacher to do a separate roster for us, because there's so many that's labeled as 1R, that's a remote kid. Well, that could be the kids that signed up for it that day, have just added that day. And although we run the report, you can't pull that kind of information out of our student information system to see that type of detail.
But even if a kid is on Plan B, they choose, and they are a Monday, Tuesday of this week. If they choose to simply log in, does that still count as I am present?
Yes, sir.
Remote
Okay.
present.
So they could be a B and still
Right.
functioning
Yes,
as a C. They don't need to make that distinction
Correct.
to us. And I'm assuming elementary A would be the same, correct?
Correct.
As long as
That is
they're logged on, they are accounted for as present.
And again, that our teachers would like for us to stop that. They would like for us to make people designate what they're going to do, and then, if you will, have the discipline to do that. Because when people bring complaints, they always like to bring the extremes. So they'll say, you know, I'm supposed to be sitting at my school today. I woke up 5 minutes before school started, so I just logged in. And the reality is, okay, so you're going to sit there and get your education. Do we punish you for sitting there and getting your education? How are you different from oversleeping versus the person who is in quarantine because of COVID? Or even if the health department didn't put you in quarantine, somebody can say, well, I want to quarantine. I talked to a dad this afternoon. I want to quarantine my daughter myself because I think that there was enough risk factor for, even though the health department didn't, I did. So I want my child home for the next 4 days this week. as long as they log in, they're getting their education. That's the important thing. So there are some districts that have made students designate. Some of those have lost a lot of students to private schools or virtual charters or other areas, but we have not made that designation yet. I'll say I have not made that designation yet. As long as they're logging in and getting their education, that's the important thing to me right now, while we're in the pandemic.
Why are our educators pushing for us to force designations?
It's the way we define attendance and stuff.
Getting away from traditional attendance, to say to somebody, well, you woke up late and you're logging in, do you get all the rights of the student that actually got up and showed up here on time? Or if somebody says, I want to go to Disney World this week, but I'm going to log into my classes and do all my work and get counted present from Orlando. It's breaking that tradition mindset. And what we have stressed, engagement is what's important. If you're engaging in the classroom and doing your work, that's the purpose for the 2021 school year.
During the pandemic, and I think that should be
Right.
flexible, because when you're not flexible, it's when everybody's in the building and then they drove up late. That's the standard, but I don't think you can apply the standard all the time during this virtual learning. So I agree with you on that.
But even after the pandemic's over, I mean, I think it's going to be hard to go back to that traditional school.
Well, it's been hard to adjust to the virtual. So, you just have
I
to.
think after the kids get used to doing the virtual, I think it's going to be hard to get them all back into the school.
I think
so.
if
Luckily, it's a small percentage, right?
30%.
They'll be running back.
Well,
It's not as small as you would think.
I'm hoping,
And if 10% stay virtual and we don't offer it, you take 10% of the educators that we have and tell them that you can't afford to pay them, and it becomes a very large number.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
I mean,
And-
that's 90 employees.
Right.
and although it's 30%, the qualitative data is important in a quantitative study. These numbers are quantitative, but the stories are important. That's the qualitative data. And there are people that say, I'm just going to stay out right now because it's not school. It's not pep rallies and field trips and band concerts and ball games and chasing a girlfriend or boyfriend in the class changes because we're masked and we're 6 feet apart and we're all this kind of stuff. And we've had people look at us and say, when the masks are gone, we come back. When school returns to normal, we will be back, but we don't like what it is today. It's not what we're used to. And so I do think that number 30% will go down, but as you said, 50%, 550 kids. That's a significant portion. And so whether we do them on a hybrid model or whether we do them in a virtual academy, both of those have positives and both of those have negatives.
Well, the other factor we need to remember is there's a good chance that even after the pandemic, a lot of the workforce will become a remote workforce. So if our job is to truly get them ready for tomorrow, maybe learning to remote learn or remote operate or remote work is that CTE step of tomorrow.
Well, then we need to be teaching discipline and how to, you know what I mean? Other skills for students to realize are so important in front of a computer home, maybe alone or whatever. I mean, it's just.
I mean, most colleges teach a time management class out of the gate.
Well, and that's where it's accountability is the great word and the dirty word of 2021, 2022. Because if you stress accountability, you're being inflexible. If you relax accountability, you've loosened standards and you're teaching a lack of accountability. And so we're navigating it. We're trying to do flexibility with guidelines. Well, it's not open season where you can turn in anything at any time in the 18-week semester, but we're trying to be more flexible of when things would be turned in, but still have some accountability that you need to turn in this section before we move on to the next section. So it's, again, we're navigating it. and we'll try to improve with our focus groups and try to make it better.
I think the main thing is we are improving. I think our procedures are improving, the process is improving. And I think maybe once the kids understand that they're going to have to do the work regardless, then maybe the grades will improve too.
And we are also looking at some, credit recovery options to help our students with, we're talking about credits being lost and graduation rate and things along those lines. I've been having some pretty candid conversations with our high school principals of ways to expand our summer school offerings, to do some credit recovery for things here. And then also looking at doing some during the school year for credits that may have been lost last semester.
I think that's a good idea
Mhm.
for students that have failed, that they could get credit recovery in summer school. I agree on that. I think that would be something that a student could help themselves out. And I think the really good students will do that. They'll try to help themselves with that.
In the past, we had done 11th and 12th grade. We're looking at expanding that for 9 through 12.
9 through
To
12.
make sure that's an option. And then we're also looking at some skill recovery for our middle school students using some of that iCares funding that we had discussed within that grant too. So we're looking at ways to improve the outcomes for these students.
I mean, the big tricky thing is a middle or high schooler that's, only able to be in class 2 days a week or maybe 3, that has ADD, or they just, or, they're just a mediocre student that, focusing on the computer is not for them. And how far do you let them keep falling until at one point are they given, are there any exceptions to scenarios where you don't want a child to completely just, completely fail everything, or do you offer for them to be 5 days a week? Are there exceptions to middle and high school scenarios? I don't know.
It's very difficult until we get relief from the social distancing, from the governor.
Mm-hmm.
We get that. I would certainly bring to the board to bring kids back as much as possible. Again, I understand the academic impact of this. It has been a detriment to the education of our kids in Stokes County and to our state and to our nation. And all superintendents don't agree with me, and everybody in our county doesn't agree with me. But there is an academic impact, and our kids need to be in the building with our talented educators to get the best quality education they can get.
Mm-hmm. We agree on that.
In full transparency, there are rare exemptions if you are a special needs student, or
Okay.
it's written into your IEP. That may happen from time to time, but that's about the only area
okay.
of flexibility that we
Okay.
have at this point.
Again, thank y'all so much. If everybody's satisfied with that topic, we'll move on. Next, we have discussion of COVID funding.
Well, we can talk about what all we've done to try to meet the challenges that we've just discussed. You have a packet of information, and it is the COVID expenditures and also the revenue. And the front page, there's a breakdown, because I have broken this down by funding sources. And I've tried to give the page number as you look at this even later, that you can come back and tie the pages back to the different types of funding. If you will, go to page 1. And if you will notice at the very top, this is state COVID money that has been received from DPI. And I have summarized the different PRCs that we've received. And in that, the total allotment that was received and the amount the allotment, the amount received, and also some transfers. When we first received these allotments, and they're coming at different times, we were told there would be no flexibility. And if we did not spend the money according to the guidelines within those particular PRCs or program report codes, that we would lose those funds. And some of the restrictions have been very difficult for our directors to try to even come up with ways to spend the money. But based on the fact that in December, we finally got flexibility, so we were allowed to spend all of our money that we received from the state. And that was $1,595,316. And you will see For example, on PRC 122, look at your transfer. We had $7,417 that was not spent for school health support. Those funds were transferred out. You can see that we needed money, for example, in 125 for school nutrition. So they ended up with an additional $120,000. Had that not been possible, with the operations that we're having now, with school nutrition, we would more than likely, that would be local dollars. So that's a great asset that we were able to do that. But below that, I summarized the state expenditures kind of by categories: technology in the pink, salaries and benefits in the green, and our personal protective equipment in the yellow. So summarizing the revenue we've received for state COVID, you can see for technology, out of all those funds, we spent $411,000. Salary and benefits to $567, and the personal protective equipment $284. And just other, I've used that to put other category for supplies, maybe some contracted services, staff development, just odds and ends of miscellaneous things to combine to put there. So that's how we spent the $1,595,000. If you will go to page 2 then, I have taken every PRC and broken it down. And on page 2, you will see we started with the PRC 154, which was supplemental funds. This was the first money that we received back in March, and this had to be expended by June of 2020, and we did spend those funds. And again, I've tried to highlight your colors where you can see where we done the technology, we done the PPEs there, we bought wipes, sprayers, gloves. That detail there will tell you exactly how we've expended it. And then I've summarized it at the bottom again, that out of this particular PRC of $226,000, we spent $23,000, almost $24,000 for technology, and the remaining portion was for our personal protective equipment. And that these funds was where we really started trying to do what we could for COVID. You will go over to page 3. The next PRC is summer reading program. This money was available through December the 30th, 2020. Again, you can see how we spent it for technology, professional development, salaries and benefits, supplies, all sorts of supplies. And different directors have headed up these programs. If you have specific questions with some of the purchases, they all can respond to what we've actually purchased as well. And then the next step, I've just summarized how we spent the $255,394. So that's kind of the concept. As you go through page 4, you will see school health support. There we received $37,807. The rules and regulations were very strict for this particular category, making it very difficult to spend. So we were able to contract with some nursing services, and also we done some contract for guidance, and only spent $30,390. Again, that left us $7,417 that we could transfer out. Go over to page 5, non-digital resources. This is where we bought some middle school and high school books. Our allotment was $11,242. We spent $11,212. $30 was transferred out. Page 6 was the student computers and devices. All of this money, the $106,255, was actually spent for technology. You can see we got charges for Chromebooks, Chromebook cases. We done some subscriptions, and also CTE server. So all of that was for technology. Page 7, school nutrition. We had an allotment of $342,330, and you can see there we spent more than that just for salaries and benefits, and then a little bit for food. We were able to do that, as I explained earlier, because where I mentioned to you we transferred funds out, this is the area that those funds went to. Page 8, personal computers and devices. Again, all technology. We webcams, the iPads, and the Google Meet. $18,736. Page 9, home and community Wi-Fi. This was one of them we really had a hard time. All of my meetings that I had with other finance officers, Karen, we tried to find ways with the restrictions they had how we could spend this money, and we were really afraid we were going to lose part of this. But with the flexibility, we were able to transfer it out. The restrictions was very difficult on this particular pot of money. So out of the 73,028, we were able to spend 4,219, and we transferred out the 68,809. Page 10.
Just real quickly,
Yes.
before you do that, this is an initial thought where people were thinking we could buy hotspots. And we could buy devices, but we couldn't pay for the service. So, and then we couldn't put devices, equipment out in public areas or put it on somebody's private servers. And that's where she's saying there were so many restrictions on this, it made it nearly impossible to spend. Now, luckily, the state did step in later with devices with service on them. So we've been able to provide hotspots. So I don't want you to look at that and say, well, you had money for hotspots because it says community Wi-Fi, but you didn't spend it on that. We couldn't spend that on that, but we do now have the Wi-Fi hotspots. So that need has been taken care of in case you're asked.
Plus, Karen received some donated, didn't we?
Yeah, that's what.
From the state, yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. Okay, page 10, the exceptional children, 206,937. And just giving you an example, they received an allotment, and just at the last minute in December, we received a major allotment with only a few weeks to spend it. So like I said, the funding dropped at different times and not necessarily leaving us a lot of flexibility and time. They've been very strict on the December 30th guideline for all these PRCs that I'm talking about. Again, salaries and benefits there. She tried to do a lot of tutoring with these funds, a lot of supplies. So you can go down and see the different areas there, and also some technology on how those funds were spent. And we transferred $43,500. The late allotment really prevented them from trying to spend the money because of the deadline. With DPI, we had to have the invoices in here and be sure that the shipment had been received. And so very restricted on all of that. Page 12, low well supplemental, 173,299. This again mostly was for technology. We did do some PPEs there. So we transferred 54,583 from this allotment. And you can see with technology, the different things from webcams to the iPads, headsets. We've done a lot of technology things with the COVID money. Page 13, the cybersecurity. This is again for technology, the antivirus, 11,623. We spent all of that allotment. Page 14, the personal protective equipment, 132,601. If you'll go back and remember the first one I mentioned to you that we received in March, basically Dr. Taylor and Ricky used all of that money at that time to get us ready to start out and for the COVID. So here was some additional funding that we used for some additional PPE. So 76,843 was actually used, and we transferred 55,758. Now, had that first allotment not been there, we would have definitely been using all of this allotment here.
Ms. Moore, can I add one thing? Part of the reason we didn't spend all that money is there's a lifespan on some of the materials and supplies that we buy, and we're running out of place to store stuff. We've actually got masks and gloves and cabinets in my office. I mean, Ricky can tell you, we literally are running out of space to store a lot of this. So instead of buying a bunch of stuff that would potentially go bad or not be used, yeah, we are continually updating our staff, reaching out to our staff, what do you need? And the last time we reached out from our nurses, principals, et cetera, we were in good shape with PPE. So that's why some of this money was not spent. It's there, and as we run through stuff, we'll order more. We just didn't have the space, to be honest with you, to house some of this stuff.
Well, when you say transfer out, what does that mean?
Transferring out means that on that first
I mean,
sheet,
where does it go to?
you can see on the first sheet that page 1, go back to page 1. You can see when it's got a minus, that means we transferred it out. Where it's a plus, most of it has gone to child nutrition or school nutrition. And also we put some additional in low wealth. But that's basically what's happened.
So it
That'll
went
kind of
off,
show.
most of it's child nutrition.
Yes, ma'am. The 120,931 went to that. And again, I go back and say, had it not been for that, that you were talking about probably local dollars that would have had to offset that figure. Okay, that's basically one pot of money that we received. Then now on page 15, I want to talk about other state and local funds. We received, all of what we just talked about was special COVID allotments. And we would not normally receive those funds unless we were in the situation we're in with COVID. Now, we also use some of our other allotments that we received for some of the things for COVID. And for example, we're getting ready to go over that. We've used $116,332.50 for technology and PPEs, $91,061.91. So let's see what made that up. If you go to page 16, we normally have a driver ed allotment. Dr. Taylor bought some gloves and thermometers. There's money there for that allotment, so we went ahead and used that. State technology, she had an allotment that we used for the server. We didn't quite have enough, so we used the remaining $2,000 some from this pot of money just to balance that out. Transportation, we bought some webcams. State digital textbooks, and this is one that Dr. Rice referred to earlier. Back as soon as in March that we heard about the fact of the COVID and what was coming, we went ahead and transferred, which we can do, transfer textbooks to digital. And that's where we purchased Chromebooks early in the very beginning. And in my conversation with finance officers, a lot of them are still waiting for shipments of Chromebooks. This was definitely a plus that Stokes County went ahead when we first started in March to try to get the Chromebooks. So that's why you see that $113,443.31 coming from textbooks. And then county technology, we just bought some webcams with some of the restrictions. Some of these expenditures could not fall, for example, if it was administrative webcams. The funds that we just talked about earlier from the state, they maybe would not allow that for that type of expenditure because they had to be instructional. So that's why we've used some of the odd ones. Then on page 17, this is where we've actually spent this from county dollars. We started a lot of this and was expended along with when we got our first allotment, not knowing we were going to be getting some of these other allotments because like I said, they dropped at the last minute and all along during the fall of the year. And we could not go back past July 1 on any expenditure we had. So out of local dollars, we had $90,133.24, and you can see the detail of the items, the 22 items there that we've actually purchased. On page 18, we're talking about another pot of money. And we're going to look at federal dollars that we've received just for COVID that normally we would not be receiving these dollars. And I've listed those here. You can see that PRC, which is Program Report Code, and DPI, they control those numbers. It's the CARES Act K-12 Emergency Relief, $1,114,845. The CARES Digital Curricular, $40,448. The CARES Learning Management, $25,993. The CARES iCares, $200,000. The GEAR Specialized Instructional, $168,969. The GEAR Supplemental Instruction, $70,800. So that means we have available from federal dollars $1,621,055. We have recently received an email from DPI to say to us more is coming. We have no idea what it's for, and we do not know how much we might get, but we know something is coming down the pipe. So out of this category here, we have, some of these dollars here have not been spent. As we go through, I'm going to show you why, because of the deadline. But salaries and benefits, we plan to spend $1,096,096, and then others. So right here, the summary was $114,114. But on page 19, note that the 163, the K-12 Emergency Relief Fund, that's available through September the 30th of 21. So we still have time to spend those funds. What we've decided to do, Dr. Rice agreed that we would move our custodian salaries from local. So we're paying those as we go along now from these funds. And that has helped us with local dollars. So this was one we didn't have to worry about supplanting funds with. So that's how we've worked in spending this money. So most of this allotment here will go to salaries and benefits. We did have to give private schools $18,742.72. That's just a mandate that we would have to reach out to them. And Michael Sands works with private schools, and that's the reason we've had to set this aside, because they were interested in getting part of the money. you will see like 165, those go through September the 30th of 22. So we've not expended any of those funds yet. Some of these, we're just in the process of getting a grant out there to get it approved by DPI. So as you go to page 20, the same thing. Again, a lot of it goes through 22, all of these. So we're just in the process. We might spend part of that this time, and it might not be any, but we will carry over so you will not lose the dollars. Mhm.
No, I was going to say I would love to hear ideas on how to support the academic needs of at-risk students that's listed on page 20, you know.
And that's that 170, and I don't know that you all have put anything out there yet. That's coming. We've not actually made the plan up at this time. But out of those funds, go to page 21. This is your grand total of your state dollars we talked about, your other state dollars, and the local dollars. Total for technology, we've spent $528,269.59. Salaries and benefits, we spent $1,663,862.38. And I say that time we get through with those custodian salaries by the end of this year, that's included in that. And then our personal protective equipment, $375,494.67. And just in that other category, which I mentioned to you, instructional, professional development, $349,928.77. So our total expenditures are $2,917,555.41 through the December 30th. I know
And
that's a
again, as
lot.
you said, there's supposedly more coming. We don't know how much or what category it's supposed to go into, but we'll look for that money when we get it.
And if you all look over this and have questions, feel free to contact me or any of the directors. We'll try to answer any questions for you, but I hope this helps with what you have.
Oh, thank you, Ms.
so
Moore.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
very thorough. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Extremely thorough.
Next, we have discussion of relaunch 2020, or
Which is what we've done for the last hour and a
Right, but
half.
you've sort of covered a lot of that material there.
And I really started to put out all this other stuff in subheadings for this, so I wouldn't have to talk much. But this is just letting you, again, an update of the numbers. If you'll notice in those first two blocks on the left-hand side, that says of January 7th data for the Stokes County, for the county at large. I know I've been pulling that data from the Stokes County Health Department Facebook page, and they quit updating that on Thursday. They didn't have an update Friday, Saturday, Sunday evenings when they normally do that. I contacted them this morning, and to be honest, they are overwhelmed right now with, I mean, they have 7 nurses who had full-time jobs before COVID-19. And now they're doing all the contact tracing. They're doing their vaccine clinics, and they said that they were going to move to reporting county data twice a week. You can, if you want the data, not in as much detail as they gave it, you can go to the state COVID dashboard, and it will tell you how many our total numbers are and how many it was increased from yesterday every day. But they pull that data from us. But they said that they're not going to report daily that anymore. I will still keep our numbers, and they're still updating our numbers for us as far as staff, students, testing positive, and in quarantine due to close contact. But just for today, we had 5 staff members who were out due to positive test results. That's 0.56% of our staffing. If you look at 900 staff members, and we have had 68 total cases so far this year, which is 7.56% of our staff. So we're inching closer and closer to 10% of our staff have had this from August 1st until now. Again, to my knowledge, no hospitalizations and obviously no deaths. Students, we have 12 active cases, which is 0.21% of our students, and total 132 cases, which is 2.31%. Just to kind of give you an average, we normally run 10 to 15 cases a day. Last week, we got up around 20 a few days. That was kind of that after Christmas surge that they talked about. Those numbers have dropped off again some today. So hopefully that is a good trend, that after Christmas bump is over and we're getting back into a normal range. Again, we have had 0 clusters of 5 or more students in Stokes County. And again, according to the health department, we have had no cases of school spread. Again, the contact tracing that we have done, while irritating at times to families, is an extra layer of precaution that we don't do for any other sickness and appears to have or is working, knock on wood. We have had nearly 500 students this year spend 2 weeks in quarantine due to close contacts. But that's not them coming back to school with potential results. And again, most of our results, when you look at any type of thing where you may see as not a cluster, but a grouping of students, has to do with family members, where a parent will get it at work, come home, there's 3 kids. Next thing you know, mom and all 3 kids have it. It's a lot of family spread, where again, not a lot of masks are worn once you get inside your house, those type of things. But our numbers have held strong. Currently, we are working with the health department about the vaccine. We have surveyed our staff, and as of this morning, 304 of our staff members have signed up to receive the vaccine. We've offered the use of our facilities and the use of our nurses to the health department to help them with vaccine clinics for our staff and then the community after we get through that. We have been notified that it will be the end of January, beginning of February before they start with staff. And that would start, the first tier would be staff members over the age of 50. And then the next grouping would be staff members under the age of 50. So we do not know when all staff members will receive it that want it. But the earliest we can look at is probably at least 3 more weeks. But that is the data that's been given to us from the health department. And then again, the last note in there is that the daily county reporting data is probably over for a while, that they're going to be doing once or twice a week reporting for the county. And I did include the next page in there, the enrollment numbers. That is up to date as of starting about last Tuesday through today. With schools, we're updating that. And 29% of our students have chosen virtual learning only. If you notice the big, huge discrepancy between A Day and B Day, it's because elementary no longer has a B Day. So everybody is plan A for them, but I wanted to show you what the numbers look like in the schools on A Day versus B Day at the secondary level. So those are those numbers as well. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but things, again, I'm very confident in our plan. I know that anything is possible any day, but again, I want to commend Dr. Taylor, Ricky, our custodial staff, our principals, teachers, for all the work that they're doing, as we keep hearing from people from the CDC to the science initiative in Durham, that in our health department, schools are some of the safest places for people to be due to our enforcement of mask, our cleaning, the social distancing, because we actually do what the state is recommending, where they may not do that in every restaurant or grocery store or home or birthday party or whatever. We are actually following the guidelines to the best of our ability, with rare exceptions here and there, but we try to address those as they occur. And we have, again, provided a safe place for our students and staff with 0 cases of school spread at this point. Any questions?
Has there been any discussion at the state level of trying to mandate the vaccine?
Not to my knowledge. Ms. Jessup, I don't know if you've heard any in your HR stuff, but I've heard nothing about mandating it for staff at this time. Okay. Right now, they're having problems meeting the want to need, and what I've heard on the news, not as regards to school, but as far as healthcare workers. to allow the people that want it to get it first, and then they would consider mandation. Is that a word? Mandating.
It is tonight.
It's close enough. And so I've not heard that conversation with school people, but I do know that right now there's a problem meeting the want to need.
Oh, yeah.
It's not mandated in the healthcare level. I don't foresee it. You mean mandatory, like you
Yes.
have to get
Yeah,
vaccinated?
I don't foresee that, but, you know, at some point that there
Maybe.
wasn't a Tdap shot either.
Right,
But now we do.
right.
Not making a prediction. I'm just saying for comparison.
Right.
want to reference that or wait?
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to item H, the FFCRA extension.
Yes, board members, you received over the course of the weekend a summary on this extension. I'm going to just hit the highlights with you and also be glad to answer any questions you may have for this extension request. The federal government provided what is called FFCRA, or Families First Coronavirus Response Act, back in the late spring. It allows for employees, whether permanent, part-time, full-time, if they cannot telework, but they are either in close contact to a positive case of COVID-19 or they in fact test positive. This particular benefit gives them up to 80 hours, or basically 2 weeks of leave time, so that that employee is not having to use their own personal sick leave, for example. This benefit expired on December 31. The Congress did, when they approved that Consolidated Appropriations Act on December 27, they allow for employers to voluntarily provide an extension on these benefits that would end on March 31. The second piece of this is the child care piece, which allows for 2/3 pay for employees who their child care is closed or unavailable due to the pandemic. We have looked at this and we were waiting on the Department of Public Instruction to provide some more guidance, which they did last Friday afternoon. And based upon what we heard from them, school districts that elect to extend these benefits would still use the same process in coding absences as we were doing prior to the December 31 deadline. So the salary for an employee would be paid from the same funding source where they're paid from now, whether it's local, state, or federal. The majority of our employees, thankfully, have been able to telework in most situations, unless there's symptoms because of COVID. They've just been too sick to work or telework the whole time. But the employees who are impacted by this the most, who cannot telework, are normally bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, those particular support areas where it's not an option. So I'll be glad to answer questions. We would like, if you agree with our recommendation to extend this, we would like it to be maybe moved to the action side of your agenda tonight, possibly. And then we would ask that these benefits, if they are extended, be retroactive to January 4. Now, we'll say to you that if for some reason we do not extend these benefits, then there is another state benefit option, but this is called the state's contagious disease benefit. It does have to be enacted by your local healthcare director. So Ms. Martin would have to indicate that the person has to either be in isolation because of close contact or in quarantine because of a positive test result. And it's for the period of time that they tell us it has to be, but we cannot decide that it has to come from the health director. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Health director or their family physician?
No, it has to come specifically from the health
So maybe if
director.
they test positive at their family practice, that information in turn is shared with the health department, and then they let you guys know that the person qualifies for this?
They would then, yes, let us know. And one good thing, we have from the beginning kept a Google shared spreadsheet with our health department. So our health director, Ms. Martin, and the head nurse, Ms. Fulcher, and Dr. Rice and I, we are able to look in that spreadsheet and share information back and forth on people who are close contact or have symptoms or people who have tested positive. So that is the starting point for using the state contagious disease leave benefit option.
Okay. Any other questions?
Make a motion, we move it to action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, all those in favor of moving that item? Thank you. That will be action item E. Next, we have the action agenda. We discussed it previously, which is item A, approval of NC Star comprehensive plans. there
Make a
any
motion to
discussion?
approve the NC Star comprehensive plan.
Sorry, any
As presented.
discussion?
I'll second.
Any discussion? We're good moving on with that. Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. Next, we have item B, approval of personnel and coaching reports. I need a motion to approve that, please.
I make a motion to approve the personnel and coaching report.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Next, we have item C, the maintenance bids, both bids, they're being approved. Is
Make
there
a
a
motion to
motion?
approve the maintenance bids as presented by Mr. Goins and his wonderful wisdom.
I second that.
Okay. Did you get that? Pam's looking at me like, looks like it was motion.
Made the motion to approve both of them. I made it. Pat seconded it. We're good to go.
We're in approved. Yes, next we have D, policies, which letting them the first reading and sitting for 30 days. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the policies as presented for the first reading of consideration pending review as it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bryant, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next, we have item E, the FFCRA extension. I need a motion to approve that.
I make a motion to approve the FFRC extension.
FFCRA, okay.
Whatever it is.
Motion by Mr. Bryant. Is there a second?
I'll make it.
Second by Mr. Rogers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I believe that's all of action. We have information and announcements.
Well, how about that employee? You just did that?
That was the FFCRA, the extension.
We already did the fire academy.
There was nothing to
Oh.
vote on that one, I don't believe. Anything else?
Okay.
We have information and announcements.
Yes, ma'am. Board members, we have several items to share with you. You have some dates. Next week, of course, is a holiday. Next Monday, the 18th of January. Scan on down. Your two meetings in February are currently scheduled for February the 1st and February the 15th, both here at the central office, beginning at 6 p.m. with the board and 5:30 with closed session. There is a fundraising request for your information on the next page. I would like to bring to your attention, there have been several gifts made since your last meeting. And just won't read through all of those, but you can see several gifts have been made in memory of Mr. Bill Goodman, Dr. Amy Goodman's husband who passed away. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Then you have graduation dates that have been set. They have been set in collaboration with the high school principals. They are as follows. North Stokes High School is Thursday, May the 27th at 7 p.m. South Stokes High School is Friday, May 28th at 7 p.m. West Stokes is Saturday, May 29th at 9 a.m. Meadowbrook is Saturday, May 29th at 12 p.m. And the early college is Saturday, that should be June 1st, I would imagine. Is that correct, Mr.?
Early college.
I'm sorry, May 1st. I apologize, at 10 a.m. And please bear in mind that none of us know exactly what things will look like in May, but we hope everything will be ready to go by that point, but they have been scheduled. You also have updated calendars that reflect all of the changes that have taken place based on weather. So you have both a traditional calendar and an updated early college calendar. And I believe that is it, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Dr. Taylor.
Thank y'all.
Now I need a motion to
Make a motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Rogers. Seconded by Mr. Robertson. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you and have a good evening.